Perhaps one of the most mysterious races on all of Tamriel, the Falmer have this unique, mysterious history that is so layered and unknown that the only other race that I think could rival them would be the Dwemer, and ironically, these two races go hand in hand because it was the alliance between the Snow Elves and the Dwemer that caused a majority of the Snow Elves to become blind and eventually become the Falmer. Now, this video is meant to talk about whether or not that the Falmer could be uplifted and brought back into society, and this is a question that Knight Paladin Galabor himself brings up in the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim, the Dragonborn DLC. There is significant evidence that suggests that the Snow Elves have continuously been evolving in a sense. Granted, they lost sight of their own vision, but they have gained an advanced hearing that makes them very susceptible to whatever is going on around them. Kind of think of like a sonar in terms of a bat sense there. And now, ironically, they were one of the most advanced and culturally adept of most races. They had beautiful architecture and beautiful works of art, and yet it seems like this is a little ironic because they ended up becoming something so crude, cruel, and demented in a sense. But essentially, the Falmer aren't necessarily stupid or simple in this case. They exhibit many features that would promote a society that is somewhat complex, at least in its structure. Now, there's the idea of technically a civilization or a city is meant to be permanent, and there's been a lot of back and forth between whether or not that they are a nomadic group or if they're a permanent settling group. And I would argue that the Falmer are in fact a settling group, and there's a few reasons at this. So essentially, even though they have tents, which suggests that they, are mobile and continuously move, and even with the fact that they have no farms, which suggests that their food sources would be significantly limited, I think the idea would be, what would need to be brought up here is the chorus. And now the chorus, and I could be pronouncing this wrong, is an insect that the Falmer have domesticated, and they're not the only breed that they've domesticated as well. They've also breeded the skeevers, or domesticated skeevers at least. And so this would provide enough ways of feeding and making sure they are fed. It's not like, you need to take these quote-unquote herding animals out and grazing on the field and continuously keep moving them. There's something you can feed with, very basic and minor things that really wouldn't suggest, it really wouldn't be too much. Now, essentially, the chorus is way more important than the skeever, whereas skeevers provide mostly a food source there. The choruses provide everything for the Falmer. Their chitin that they produce, and yes, it is chitin, not chitin, the chitin they produce is responsible for the armor they have, the weapons they have, the tents they use to construct their homes, and a number of other things that really suggest that there's a reliance on the choruses. And now, granted, this must mean that they use this as some sort of food source as well, considering how much they actually use the chorus. They even use the poison that the chorus produces to make poisons that would be used on their blades or their weapons or arrows, right? And this is incredibly, at least incredibly advanced for a civilization that is meant to be rather simple. And I think this would lead me to believe that they are in fact a permanent settling species. They don't move around too much. They might have to be moved based off of other reasons in terms of like war or being pushed away by others, or maybe they're simply just killed. That would raise an idea of them being forced to move. But overall, we see them occupy several dwarven ruins that suggest, they imply that they're not leaving anytime soon. So this idea makes me believe that they are sedentary. And now, their technology is relatively limited. They use the chitin for their armor and weapons, shelters, fences, chests, everything. And that is relatively limited. However, the poisons and the alchemy that they produce, that is needed to produce these poisons, is relatively advanced. They produce very, very deadly poison, and this is something that obviously would be seen in a higher structured society. It's not going to be easy to create things so small like that, and they have been known to use magic as well. It's difficult to produce magic, but they do have a lot of minor spells that they are able to conjure. And what is ironic is that they are able to captivate this alchemy and use this against their foes or people they are trying to ambush. We have seen them take prisoners and it takes slaves and take people down and have them be their servants for life, and they're stuck down in whatever Falmer ruin or whatever Dwemer ruin or area the Falmer are occupying. So we've seen that happen. So they have a degree of, I wouldn't say morality, but they have a degree of knowing what is valuable, and they took these people as slaves in a way of saving them time and effort from doing anything else or whatever it is they want to do. So essentially that implies that these people are also very loyal. If you go to Blackreach in the Elder Scrolls V, you will actually be attacked by some of these servants, implying that these people are very loyal to the Falmer, which is a little weird, but it's not really explained too much. But it would be no doubt that they would. If you had a massive warrior with the capabilities of shouting and doing all this stuff, you think the people would kind of flock to him and turn on the Falmer, but instead they still attack you. Granted, it's just one man or woman or whatever species you decide to play as, but at the same time, you are the Dragonborn. I think that in itself would make or convince any others to be like, yeah, we'll join your side now. We don't need to really want to stay down here anymore. So their sophistication isn't really in questions here. They have to be somewhat sophisticated to make these poisons and create this kind of society. And whether or not they have a hierarchy is a little unknown. We do know that they have sorceresses and sorcerers, which imply that they may have a higher maybe higher up in the hierarchy there, and that the grunts are going to be doing most of the work while the sorceresses and sorcerers do some of the more advanced work. So it suggests a simple yet not really developed hierarchy there, at least. But regardless of which, it implies that the Falmer aren't necessarily an advanced civilization compared to all the other races in Tamriel. However, they are a complex one that is on the verge of continuous development, and we know that they have been communicating with one another thanks to Galabar, and we do know that there is some sort of degree in keeping a culture together. And so whether or not the Falmer can advance or come together and form a new civilization is still relatively unknown, but it is possible that snow elves have escaped and sought their own little refuge outside of the Dwemer, and we do know this because Galabar and his brother had to have survived somehow. And so it is possible that these pockets have survived and that they could in a way help and focus on uplifting their own brethren in a sense and bringing them back into the fold. Or it could be a fact or a manner that they might bring back the Falmer as their own specific different race that they feel some sort of appreciation for due to them being their kin at one point or another. And in conclusion, I think it's safe to say that the Falmer are on the verge, or could potentially be on the verge of being uplifted. It's difficult to say when or how or who will be responsible for it, but they have the capabilities of having an advanced society. They just haven't really gotten there yet. They seem to have permanent life settlements, and they seem to have a way of feeding themselves and creating and crafting themselves, and they seem to be relatively sophisticated with the way they have the alchemy and the way they create these poisons, and overall the way the way they communicate and settle together shows that there is a degree of cooperation with one another, and that they aren't just merciless to each other either. They have a degree of kin and fondness for one another. So with that, take that as you will. This is going to be an introduction to the Falmer in a sense. I'm going to be covering the Falmer a little bit more in detail than I have already. I've already done a couple things on them, but I'm going to do a specific history on the Falmer, and I want to do a recent history of them as well as I want to do a recent history on the Orcs. But I also want to focus more on the Falmer and talk about how they truly became what they were, and I think this video was a great introduction into that topic. So I hope you all enjoyed, and I hope to see you guys in the next video. Peace. If you just happened to stumble upon this video and enjoyed, maybe consider subscribing. If you are a returning subscriber and you enjoyed, please hit that like button. It really helps way more than you actually think it would. And I hope to see you all in the next video. Peace.